Like to call to order this meeting of the Issaquah School District, September 12th, 2024. And with that, I'd like you to join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We have in past meetings, we have done our longer full land acknowledgement. What we'd like to do in this meeting is start this meeting um, with our abbreviated land acknowledgement, and that is our Snoqualmie land acknowledgement. So I acknowledge that I am on the indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. With that, we do have a quorum of the board. Director Gallinger is with us remotely, will join us shortly, and then we will have Director Coyne join us here as well in about 30 minutes also. To get our meeting started tonight in public comment, we would like to start with the formal introduction and welcome of our 2024-2025 school board representatives. So I'll ask Director Moraldo to help me welcome them.
Thank you. I am really excited. We had a rigorous process by which we chose the students. We had over 88 applications. We have 4 of our students are coming back from last year, so we fulfilled the roles for the 4 remaining. And I did want to introduce them to you each. So starting is to those to my left, we have Naomi Wu, who is representing Issaquah High School. Aditi Marali, who is the second year rep for Liberty High School. Then we have Dashita Jain, who is the second year rep for Skyline High School. Krish Parashar, who is the first year representative for Liberty High School. Milo Walsh, who is the first year representative for Gibson Eck High School. Ava Datta, who is the first year rep for Issaquah High School. Neela Natarajan, who is the first year rep for Skyline High School, and Hala Alcorn, who is the second year rep for Gibson Eck High School.
Thank you. And we had a work study before this meeting with our student reps, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. So first thing is approval of our consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second. Right, I can second now. I don't know how to do that. And with that, we will take a vote. Hopefully you can hear Director Gallinger. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. A consent agenda passes. Next, we have the establishment of the regular agenda. Superintendent, any changes to the regular agenda?
There are no changes to the regular agenda.
Oh, I forgot the rest of the public input. So sorry about that. So I started public input. I do have a list of sign up for public input. The list that I have is all related to an agenda item. Is there any public input, either in the room or on Zoom, that is not related to an agenda item this evening? Seeing none in the room, seeing none on Zoom, I will now appropriately move forward. Thank you. Okay, so first up on our agenda is a review of the board retreat, which took place over 2 days on August 26th and August the 27th. We retreat right here in the boardroom. So we come here to this room and spend 2 full days, but it is an opportunity for the board to go deeper on an additional set of scheduled topics, which you will see attached to the agenda. Day 1 being focused on innovation, high school innovation, the bond and bond communications, a linkage with our King County representatives. A conversation around student behavior support was the Day 1 agenda. Day two, a focus on the update of board policy, which we're going to start to talk about later this evening, sustainability, and some work brought forward from our students on sustainability, equity-based budget, and discussion around personal finance and that offering in our schools, and then a conversation about things we might want to had tabled or wanted to talk about for future. So I will open it up for a board discussion or reflection on these 2 days we had together.
Well, I guess that would start with me. It wasn't very full time together. I appreciated hearing, getting an opportunity to speak with both County Council Member Balducci and County Council Member Perry. It's been a long time actually since we've met with our county representatives. Unfortunately, Councilmember Reagan Dunn was not able to join us, which we knew beforehand. But he was disappointed he couldn't join us. But really talking, I think a major portion of the discussion was the Best Starts for Kids funding. And it just seemed like it was an aha moment for them that Issaquah, no organization within the Issaquah School District is getting any of that funding. And so I think it's really interesting, and we'll continue to work with them and address the reasons why that is. But how can the county support our district? And there's really, again, it's this perpetuation of this idea that we are such a wealthy community. We don't have students who have needs that need to be met. Those dollars can be spent better elsewhere. And it disregards the number of students we have living in poverty, the number of struggling students that we have, and that students struggle for different reasons. It's not just a matter of how much their family makes. So I think it was a really good conversation to be able to say, what need looks like is determined by a number of factors. So for me, that was a very important conversation that we needed to have during that retreat. The second piece in my thing is not scrolling, was going through our board policies, but then maybe I'll spoil it for the others. Having the student reps, or not student reps because our student reps are here, but having the student environmental ambassadors come and speak to us about their plans and their desires for really looking at sustainability within the district. And I would say that as a district, we have been at the forefront of so many green initiatives, and how many of our schools qualify for awards based on being very environmentally friendly. For a student group to say, hey, we're not doing enough. But no, it's good to push us. And in what ways do we need to push? And it's also a great opportunity for students to learn what it means to have a voice in their world that's surrounding. So, as you're growing, we're not raising children, we're raising adults, right? You're going to become an adult one day. So how do you work in this broader world of advocacy with your local government? And so it was really a good opportunity for them to come and speak to us about things that are still concerning them, and ways that they want us to be even more educating students better about protecting the environment. So that was a good conversation, and I figure I hit two, so I'll leave some for the rest of you.
Thank you, Director Gallinger. Would you like to add your reflections?
Probably not right now.
Okay. I'll certainly go through mine, and then Superintendent, I'll turn it over to you. So I think it was one of our best retreats, just from a topic perspective, and that it was a wide range of things that are all really important currently. That we had a great set of material that the district was able to help us prepare with, to have deep and meaningful conversation, that we had great guests coming in and out of the room, whether it was county council or our students working on sustainability, or the consultants we've been having help us on our board policy updates. I think it was a rich couple of days and a good use of our time. I think the couple that I would maybe highlight, and I think maybe some of these are the boards around the room. We had different ones, but really getting into some of not only the plans for program for how we might innovate and develop our programming for all of our high schools, um, by program, but also by facility. So what will the associated facilities need to look like, which led well into our bond conversation. So I think that was really great to see the level of creativity, flexible space, the additional capabilities that we can offer by having, frankly, just less students in any one of our high schools, so we can use space better and allow more access um, to the adults that are in the building, to activities that are that are available to them, and then into creative spaces to really bring some of their vision to life. So I think those two conversations coupled are really super important. And as always, we press on. Could we do more? I will always press on. What about middle school? Um, that's what I do. I think as we look forward, we had a very interesting conversation on equity-based budgets and how do we get uh, what's the right word I would want? Some less, some non-subjective math on what does need look like across our system. How can we quantify our need in ways that are either not subjective or not manipulatable by local population or local programs, and be really clear about what that looks like. And then what might we do from a budgetary perspective? What have we already been doing, which was part of the conversation? How have we already started shifting resources? But what might we do going forward to ensure we have the right level of resource and type in each of our buildings? I think my takeaway was um, the profile of our schools are actually quite homogenous, um, much more homogenous when you look at some of those factors in maybe a bit more clinical light than sometimes we talk about them. Sometimes we may feel emotionally about them. And so what really do we want to make different choices about was super important. And so I think it underscores how strong the programming we have today is. And again, what are some of those small incremental updates we can make to just strengthen our building? So I think those are a couple that stood out to me from what was a great couple of days of depth of conversation. Superintendent, what would you add?
Well, for me, the passion area I have is certainly around secondary innovation and how we consider our work as it relates to career preparation and make stronger ties and build upon the great things that we currently already do. Um, at Gibson Neck, we have an internship model. Things built, learning builds off of real world learning. I made the joke that I went to a college university for undergraduate where there were no requirements. It was an open curriculum outside of your concentration. So the freedom, right, and choice that really is guided by an individual student's passion, interest, and then how that connects to the future is something of deep interest to me. And we do have things that we have to teach, and that's important. But how do we free up ourselves to do more of that career exploration? And then on equity-based budgeting, making sure that our resources are going to the places where we have the highest need is an important conversation while we're also preserving and maintaining and sustaining a level of resource across all of our schools at the same time. And that's a really powerful conversation to be able to engage in. And then finally, the bond communications topic is also important and top of mind for me. We'll have a short update on that in a bit. So that is the big initiative that's happening district wide right now. So I want to make sure that that was a timely conversation. And I want to thank my colleagues on our executive cabinet and beyond who helped prepare for the retreat because it was several days just before the start of the school year. So as we know, the start of the school year always has a lot of activity behind the scenes. Our teachers are preparing their classrooms, our administrators are on site, our staff are preparing and finalizing lots of details for transportation, welcoming new students, welcoming returning students. And so for me, it was appreciative that our team was able to step in at the right moments and to provide that support to have a productive conversation. So thank you.
Wonderful. Any additional thoughts or comments?
I was just the other thing I wanted to recognize is that we have a slate of items that we will be talking about and voting on of policies that we did have our consultants come in another time to address some more specific things. This discussion was more around more content specific changes rather than just verbiage change from policy governance to coherent governance. So we had some more in-depth talk about our policies, and you'll see the results of that tonight.
Fantastic. Okay, with that, we will move to our next agenda item, which is a recap of our work study for prior to this session. So prior to the start of our meeting tonight, we met with all of our student representatives, and we met on I guess it's in our policies tonight as well. We met on a proposal and request the student reps put forward starting last school year, which is on formalizing an advisory vote to the board, which would mean when the school board is going to make a formal vote within our meetings, that our student reps would be able to provide their input in a more formal manner that would be registered as their input on the topic and would be formally part of what the board is considering as we make any vote. So that's what we talked about before. Director Maraldo, do you want to maybe kick us off with your thoughts from the work study?
Yeah, it was a great opportunity to hear from the students, and they have been considering this item actually since last year. So our second year reps were really able to kind of lead that conversation around what it is that they're hoping for and looking at being able to present their voice in more than just making comments during board meetings and making it more meaningful and being able to cast an advisory vote. And so I think that's it was really good to hear from them why they wanted to do it, what impact they thought they would have. And so I think it was a good conversation.
Would any of you like to talk about the conversation?
I also agree. I think it was a great conversation just to learn about what logistical needs that we might need to satisfy with this, how we should logistically go about doing this in terms of technology and in terms of understanding the potential risks that might come with casting a vote. We did discuss that our vote would be anonymous through a technology platform. And so it was great getting to see different perspectives on kind of what the best way to go about the vote would be.
I just want to say thank you for giving us this time and space to talk with you about our proposal and for supporting us through the process so we can all get it done and view everyone's opinion and perspective on it.
I thought it was a really great space to discuss this project that Aditi has been heading and that we've been working on. Oh, is it on? Okay. Okay. It was cool to be able to discuss this project. I said that Aditi's been heading that we've been working on for a long time, and it was also great to be able to take this thing that we've been working on and that we're passionate about and bring the incoming reps into and to introduce them to some things that we've been thinking about and that we care about and to kind of have that community. So
I was also grateful to be able to kind of fine tune a couple of things, the discussion from the board, such as making sure that we're facilitating conversations with our ASBs and our clubs. I think that was great input from the board, and I'm super excited to roll this out.
Awesome. I think I'll just add my thoughts, which was we got into some of the things that are maybe not the funnest part about the work we do as a board. So what do open public meetings mean? What does it mean for public records requests, right? That's stepping in a sort of role, formalizing your advisory vote. Those are things that become a reality. And so I think that's certainly an interesting part of this kind of work for you guys to get aware of, and that we talked about getting some just additional overview so you understand the laws in Washington that certainly relate to us as elected and information that comes to us as you provide that vote. I think that's super important. I think for me, it really brought up some concerns. It brought up concerns for me, and I think I'm pretty sure I called myself a mama bear at where there are more controversial topics that we do get into, and my concern of potential unkind um, response from our community, potentially, where you vote on things where you express opinions or votes that may not be well received by some, and making sure that you understood that potential, making sure we do what we can to make sure that that's not impactful in any way. So we talked about the anonymized voting as an example, but um, I think when posed with that question, this group maybe gave me one of the most set of inspired responses I've ever heard about how important it is to you to be committed to this process. Your understanding that change does not come without risk. And just, I didn't fully cry, but I got real close today. And so I just wanted to share that with this community that you're serious about this work. You're serious about representing your communities. And that I'm saying all this to hope people understand that kindness matters in our discourse, and that you guys are stepping up to do this work, and that frankly, we step up to do this work, and that, we just all need to have a discourse so we can get to some answers. But you made me very proud. You maybe didn't completely get rid of the mama bear part, but I'm just super impressed by this group. And so we'll do our part in making sure you have all the information that you need. We'll do our part in making sure we support your passion around these topics. And I think it was a really, frankly, emotional moment for me. We have been joined by Director Coyne. Thank you for doing other service business for us while we got the meeting started. We were talking about our work study on the student vote, the student rep advisory vote. Is there any commentary you'd like to add to that discussion?
I would just second really what Director Mulling said. I was so impressed with our students, and just hats off to our community and the wonderful students that we have in the Issaquah School District. I was also had some of the same questions and concerns, but you all dispelled those. So again, just thank you. It was a great conversation.
Awesome. Superintendent?
I left our work study very inspired. I'm always inspired whenever I hear our student representatives weigh in or lead something or provide insight and perspective. So I'm so excited for this year. I can't wait to see how the evolution of student voice here continues to grow and build, and see you all as leaders in that work. So thank you so much.
Good job, guys. With that, I think we will move on, Superintendent, to works in progress.
Great. So I want to say it's been a very strong start to the school year. Curriculum nights are underway. Families and students and caregivers and teachers and staff are engaging. I just see it everywhere in the district, and I'm so excited to just have this year be off to such an amazing, incredible start. And I want to thank everyone in our entire staff community who has prepared for this moment in time, and then will continue to grow that work throughout the course of the year. An update on some of our enrollment. Our count is down slightly from our projection, but the September count has been traditionally lower than our October count and the annual average. So we do expect to see that pick up and increase by the October count, which is an important moment where we look at our numbers. So we are expecting that. Safety and security, not only for us, is a huge continued area of focus, but obviously, in light of the incidents and the tragic events in Georgia, we are continuing to maintain a focus on reviewing our own internal practices. I had an opportunity to meet with the Chief of Community Programs and Services Division for King County Sheriff Office directly. And he's responsible for the agency's outreach programs, recruiting efforts, communications, and contracting. And we just were able to sit in the moment of what is on the mind of our law enforcement partners and our first responders as it relates to support and working with schools. And we were able to talk about what are the ways that we are seeing, best practices to review and prepare for any emergency. And so we have some, ideas in the works, and our team will be talking more about that. But it's always good to maintain a good communication with all parties in the communities. And we do work with many jurisdictions, so it's helpful to also have very strong support from King County overall. The Smarter Balance Assessment data was released by the state this week, and many people might have seen that data released by the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction indicates that our students are continuing to perform at a proficient or advanced level at among some of the highest rates in the state. And performance levels for us are similar to the prior 2 years overall, and for students nearly in every demographic and different program groups. So results continue to reflect, though, a gap in learning for students in some different demographic and program group areas, and that is also true across the state. But we are seeing some early bright spots. So specifically, our students in the low income that come from low income backgrounds are outperforming the state demographic by 12% in ELA and math. And they also outperformed other peer students in other comparison districts by quite a bit for both math and a bit in ELA, English Language Arts. So I wanted to just highlight those bright spots for us, and that's a top of mind thing as we continue to focus on academic learning and also then the supports that go with supporting academic learning to be true. We have lots of bond updates, so I'm going to hold that for this next portion on the agenda because that's another aspect of where we've been doing a lot of work over the past couple weeks.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Superintendent? Okay. With none, we can move forward to those bond updates.
Wonderful. So I'd like to start as we welcome up Martin Turney and Tom Mullins with sharing an early preview of our bond video for the district, starring also one of our fantastic student representatives. And so we'd like to start off with that, and then I'll share some factual information and invite Martin and Tom to also share.
Hi, I'm Aditi. And I'm Anara. As students, we want to feel ready for anything when we graduate from Issaquah School District. That's why we're here to talk about the 2024 School Modernization and Construction Bond on November's ballot. Students and teachers should feel safe at school so they can focus on their learning. Bond funding enhances security measures like perimeter fencing, adds secure entrances at all buildings, and upgrades 1,600 security cameras. Our school should prepare students for life after graduation, whether that's college, technical training, the military, or going straight to work. Bond funding will create new learning spaces and work-ready programs in health sciences, design, manufacturing, and engineering. This bond will update air ventilation systems for better health, fix or replace roofs, and make our buildings more energy efficient. That'll cut down on maintenance costs. Just like your home, we want our buildings to last a long time. By modernizing and maintaining them, we get more out of our investment. Plus, every student deserves the same opportunities, no matter their background or family income. With this funding, we'll bring all district buildings up to the same level. Our high schools are over capacity, and we need more space for new classrooms and programs. This funding will help expand high school facilities, as well as add accessibility features so students can learn and grow together in a safe and modern environment. So that's the 2024 School Modernization and Construction Bond. You can learn more on our district website. Don't forget to vote by Tuesday, November 5th.
Congratulations, DT. You might have a new profession in video production and so forth.
Thank you so much. And I'm extremely grateful to the communications team for inviting me to be part of it.
Yes, and we should specifically say Robert Miller, who leads, coordinates, and also produces and everything else with respect to our video communication. So, but thank you, because you are the reason why that video could, get pulled off. So thank you. our activities as a district have been to just get information out about the bond. The Bond Advisory Committee last spring put in motion the sort of cornerstones of this bond package and initiative. The board voted to put it on the ballot. It is our job as a district to get information out, to answer questions of factual nature, and to ensure that we are doing our part to provide materials for others to be able to talk more about the bond in the community. And so we have already been to about 15 schools and sites already as district staff. We are partnering in teams to do that because this is a shorter timeline because of the start of the school year to when actual ballots are dropped on October 16th. And it's been great. In fact, it's been fantastic, so fantastic to be at school sites and every site. I wonder if we can maybe do something like this every year. Not the bond, but be engaging and you know, in front of our team members and on the school sites. It's fun and it's great to hear questions and comments. So with that, I'll pass it over to Martin and Tom to share some more, but I wanted to share some of the highlights. We've been very busy just being on site with our colleagues.
Yes, thank you. It's been nice to get out and talk to staff and give the information about the bond and the presentations we have developed. You mentioned we're about a month out from the ballots dropping and the pamphlet going out for people to look at that information. Thank you again to the comms team as we continually update the common questions on the website and try to make sure that as we hear things out there that we're getting them up and putting them on the website. So just wanted to mention that, and I may be asking for your autograph later because that was pretty darn good. You want to say?
I will say that we've had, you can see in the boardroom here by the podium by Tom and Martin, we have various poster boards enlarged for what sites look like, some of the connections to career preparation, and the overall sort of expanse of where all of our projects will be, you know, important to. It'll cover every single site. So if you have been to a school recently, obviously everyone in this room has been to a school very recently, you will see the poster boards as you enter a school building. And then you will also see our bond fact sheet one pager, both at our before and after school care entrance points, as well as at the entrance points of all schools. And I know for a fact at our curriculum nights, we're also distributing that information. Teachers, principals are all talking about this as part of their own welcome back to families. And so we're doing everything we can to equip people with information. If you have a request for further information, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are hustling to, you know, keep up with all of those questions, and we'll work our hardest. So that's our role, and we're excited to continue to do that. Anything else? And I want to say thank you to Tom and the communications team for being able to produce all these materials and get them out to schools. It was a 3-day effort just to get everything out. Tom, do you want to share anything?
Nope. Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
The boards are great. Where was I? This Creekside last week. And so it was great for them to be able to see their individual board with their project. So the ability for each building to see what changes are being proposed for them, I think is super helpful. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Was going to mention that too. I was at the Skyline Curriculum Night earlier this week, and that board right there was right in front when you walked in. So it was great to see that, and having our one pagers that superintendent was mentioning. These great pieces of information were out there too, and I know people were taking it. So it was good to see that people were interested. So good work.
Student, anyone? No. Wonderful. I will just also give a plug for the ever updating and full of information bond site that's now on the main. You can get to from the main page of the district website as well, Bond 2024. I think, as you mentioned, it's been great work to continually update with questions as people have them to make sure we're sharing those out with the broader community. So thank you so much. Want to say anything about bond before I go?
Sure. You know, it's funny that, you know, I love that you use the disclaimer of like, you know, we're providing like factual information as if
any of this that we're providing is not factual at all is. I think there's two things that stand out to me. One, the biggest chunk is modernization. It's $317 million. And then when Martin puts it in perspective of if you have $1.3 billion of assets and you spend 4% a year to upkeep them, that translates to $52 million. You multiply that times the 6 years of the bond, you get to the $317 million. That just really put it into context for me. So I really appreciate that. And the other thing I want to put in context is safety and security. I think one of the foundational things that we can do for safety and security is make sure that our high schools are the right size. And because if we want to know every student by name, strength, and need, we just can't do that as well in a school of 2,500 students as we can a school the size of Liberty. And that's really what our goal is. And so one of the most foundational things we can do for safety and security is have the right size of high school. And I'm not ready to.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us, Director Gallagher. And with that, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is a monitoring report, operational expectations 5, internal financials. We stay over to you, Superintendent.
Great. So as we kicked this off, this was a continuation from the conversation at the last board meeting. And the clarification questions were something that Martin
Sorry for that. Forgot the motion.
I move the board accept the annual monitoring report, operational expectation 8, communication and support as presented.
Second. Superintendent. We're on 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say?
Oh, did you say 8?
I hit the wrong one. Yes, OE5.
Oh, I'm reading 5 and hearing
Okay.
5.
Operational expectation OE5, internal financial administration as presented.
Second.
Okay.
Superintendent.
Thank you. This is a continuation of last board meeting. And there's 2 primary changes in here that I think are important. One is we're responding to the clarification questions around which year we're in. And so when you have monitoring reports and then you have delayed audit years and then you have the year that you're in, it can get very convoluted. So we lined up our timelines and made sure we were in the same reporting year that we were supposed to be. And also we converted the content and format into the operational expectation format. And that was just a minor conversion, but it did take some work to do. So that is something that we did as we prepared this, and I'll turn it over to Martin.
Thank you. So as you mentioned last meeting, it was presented as an EL5, and we've converted it now to the OE. That changed some of the crosswalk to what items we were updating for you. So in this OE5, section 5.4, this is one that we took a look at, and based on the last meeting and the input, we said, you know what, this is just a little overcomplicated, right? We're trying to be in 3 different years. And really what we needed to tell you was that the interpretation and the evidence should align. So we said, what exactly are we saying? We ended the year. We ended it within the range that is expected in this section. And here's our evidence with the audit. So we tried to really boil it down to this is it. And now that one connects to what is now 5.13, which should look, I'll just wait till we get there. I think it's below. If you scroll down to 5.13.
5.13.
13. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So this is not much change. We added the link to the audit report. We added a link to the operating budget with the amount, and the rest stays the same. So again, this is another example of where we're saying we're complying with what's established in number 5 and staying within the parameters the board set. So this is essentially the same, and now those two tied more cleanly together for you. And hopefully it makes a little bit more sense when you read that. We did have a couple of other things that were updated, as the superintendent mentioned. I think those were pretty self-evident throughout the read. So if you would like, we can look at those, but we just updated the document and cleaned up those 2 sections mostly. Yep.
Thank you. Any questions for? No. We appreciate the cleanup of this. We don't want there to be ever confusion or trouble tracking things in any report, but especially ones that are finance related. So absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate it. With no further questions, we have a motion. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Mullins, for doing everything as I was sitting in traffic forever. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we have the technology to keep running and not have to worry about delaying the meeting. So the next item on our agenda is monitoring report operational expectation 8, communication and support.
I move the board accept the annual monitoring report, operational expectation 8, OE8, communication and support as presented.
Second.
Superintendent.
Great, thank you. I want to make sure that we have Donna Hood, Dana Bailey, and Martin Turner just available at the podium for any clarification questions that do come up for this operational expectation. So 3 things from my point of view, and I know that the board's already read this report, so I'll just highlight a couple things. One is I continue and actually through this operational expectation and shift to coherent governance language and structure to try to continue to make sure that these reports are more clear, less of a laundry list, get to the point, although it's still quite a long report. So I did want to say that we're making progress towards that. And I actually think not just progress in the actual report itself, but with the arrival and transition of 2 board members, we've had to also continue to maintain strong relationships and how do we continue to build that. And that not only happens in terms of the interpersonal interactions, but also the way the board is supported and making sure that there's different aspects of our work that are visible, transparent, just in time as needed, but also in advance as needed as well. So that's sort of the big bulk of number 1. Number 2 is there's an exception. We had noted that here as it relates to my communication and support of the board for formerly known as Executive Limitation 12. And so there was a lot that was going on last spring, and I recognize that it was not as seamless as it could have been, and so I wanted to make sure that was noted as an exception. That's why this monitoring report is put forward as in compliance with an exception. And then the third point I'll make is that there was an aspect here of the fact that as a policy governance, now coherent governance board, we have regulations that occur and that we as a district oversee and continue to revise and modify that are part of our district. Now, in other types of district governance models, that's where the board is actually leaning in on the policy side. So making sure that we were naming that we've been doing a lot of review of our policies, or actually, let me specifically say they're not our policies. They are our regulations and procedures to ensure that we're up to date, that we are considering the changes that are happening real time with WASDA policy and ensuring that we're also better meeting the needs of our students. And so we want to make sure that our regulations and procedures allow us to do the things that we aspire to do on behalf of our students. So we're continually making sure that that's being refreshed. And we've been able to get back to that. COVID put a big interruption, a lot of that kind of work. So some of it's cleanup, but some of it's also helping to lean into the aspirations that we truly want to be true for our district results. So those are 3 big things I just wanted to highlight for the board. And we're available for any questions because they touch different aspects of all of our work holistically as well.
Perfect. We'll open up for any clarifying questions first, and then go to public input, and then we'll go to board discussion. So any clarifying questions on the report from our students either? No? Okay. Is there any public input for this item? Okay. Want to open up for board discussion?
I am happy to start. I'll just continue to note the striving towards simplification, helpful, making more clear. Really appreciate the transparency in the exception and the willingness to talk through that along the way. I think that'll just improve how we work going forward and how we share information. And then I just appreciate within each of these sections, it's clear in the evidence and the approach that there's a focus on continuous improvement. And so that's appreciated.
Anyone else?
Well, I think this really is about the relationship of the superintendent and the board. And so much of as I read through this, I think of that's how are we building ourselves as a team of 6. And it's so hard to communicate what that means intrinsically and as a team working together just with words on a page. So I did want to at least be able to specify that I appreciate that we do have a good communication between the board and superintendent, and that it's an open two-way street between us, that you take time to meet with us. We have opportunities to meet one-on-one with you, so that isn't reserved just for the leadership of the board, that it's each one of us individually gets that time with you, which I think is really important as well. So I think overall what this shows me is that we have a good relationship with our superintendent, which is extremely important for the health of the organization as a whole.
And I would agree with everything that was said earlier. And I guess maybe the additional perspective I can add as a new board member, appreciate the time the superintendent has spent with us, the connections that we've been able to make with the members of the cabinet. And it really has felt like a very seamless onboarding experience. And I know if Director Taylor were here, he'd probably agree too. Appreciate all of the time you've spent with us when you come on as a new school board director. There's a lot to learn. And we've really had to lean on the district and the superintendent a lot, and appreciate that time. So thank you.
I would agree with that. And, I think that one of the things we have taken advantage of is with the transition of 2 new board members to really have us pause and make sure we understand why we're doing something, and then we're not just doing it because we've been doing it that way for the past 15 years. And so that's part of what helps the cleanup, is that we're also wanting to question that. I think you bring up something about like 8.12. It's one of those hard ones of like, what would term it to be a significant change in regulation? And I agree, we're not generally a fan of like getting a whole laundry list, but this may be one of those where that would be where the laundry list is probably appropriate, because that's probably the only other way we would capture. And it's really less for us. It's really about the people that would follow us, that would get a sense on the historical piece that they wouldn't have. And that's the part even that we lost, versus that's why we go and refer to these reports so frequently. But that would the one where I would probably say, whether it's the WASDA policy updates or any of the regulations that you do for whatever reason, I would suggest that would be a helpful place. Again, not for us here today, but for whoever follows us. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then I really appreciate that there is no question that you and your team have worked really hard on 814 to make sure that the presentations are really about framing the board discussion and informing us so we can have a robust discussion. And to be able to, it's providing the right amount of information and detail to us. And we really appreciate that and know that has been intentional work you've done with your team, and it's noticed, and we want to extend gratitude and acknowledge that. So thank you for that. Any other comments? No? Any comments and reflection at all from anything that we've said?
Dr. Bailey and I almost put a chart in for actually all of the regulation and changes. And then I said, wait a minute. It's like, feels like a laundry list. So that is helpful feedback. We can easily do that as we move forward into next year as well. But it was a moment where, we actually, it's funny because we actually had a chat about that.
In general, we're anti-laundry list. It's just not, and one of those things that's really to memorialize all the things that you guys do that we don't even have awareness of, that people don't want to know. It's like, oh, when was the last time the district updated X policy? Could be like student attendance or whatever. So perfect. Well, we have motion on the table, and there's no other discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. next item on our agenda is board policy updates first read. And my preference would be that we would probably take turns, as in not me taking turns, but the three of you, and going through and just reading the parts that we're updating. And then once we do that, open it up for public comment. But that way we're reading into the record just the parts have changed, because since we just did the adoption of migration from policy governance to coherent governance, and now what we are doing in the second step is to say, okay, so in the realm of coherent governance, what policy updates that we feel it's time for the district to do. So I know there's been a lot of interest in this, and thank you for your patience to wait till we did the migration before we then talk about substantive changes. So
and just to clarify, you want us to go through each policy, read the red line, but no discussion at this time.
that would be my
Okay.
preference. Just title and then what it is. And if you want to provide context to whatever the red line part you're reading for like why that's there, that's totally fine.
Okay.
It's up to you.
I'm happy to start. The first one that we have, we talked about in the open, so I think it makes sense. It is GC 12, student representatives, and I guess the context of these updates are around formalizing the potential to formalize the student's voice as a non-binding student advisory vote. So the edits in the document are as follows in 12.1, changing what was previously a non-voting advisory positions to voting positions. In 12.3A, updating it to say for the students to listen and to participate in board meetings in order to. So clarifying the more active participation, active listening role. 12.3E, to provide the board with a non-binding student advisory vote, pro, con, or abstain, after discussion closes, but immediately before the board votes on any agenda item, excluding consent agenda, calendaring, and roll call votes, requiring a board vote. And then 12.4, that we're striking the notion that students will not have voting rights because they would, but continue on or they still would not make motions, etc. I think that is all of that. Yes. In that one.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I'll read OE1, which is operational expectation. And we did essentially a full rewrite in theory, although the focus is really on three words there: inequitable, disrespectful, and imprudent. So there was a change there on those. I'll read the new version essentially of this, which is: the superintendent shall take responsible measures to prevent and not cause or allow any practice, activity, decision, or organizational condition which is unlawful, unethical, unsafe, inequitable, disrespectful, imprudent, in violation of board policy, or endangers the district's public image or credibility. That was OE1.
Thank you.
Okay, I have OE2, treatment of people. We changed something in the board values. We included the words that parents in the general students, parents in the general community should feel welcomed and be treated with courtesy. And some of these changes are around the word respect, and that might have some different connotations. So are there better ways to describe things? So then in the first portion, the superintendent shall maintain, rather than respectful, we're using the word welcoming and conducive to effective learning. In 2.3, the word respect has been changed. In 2.3a, rather than respect for all opinions, it's now consideration for all opinions with a respectful response.
Thank you.
Next, we have OE3, personal administration. Okay, I couldn't find the red line. The update is to the board value statement at the top of this item. which is to make the comment of the board ends in line with our updated governance approach. So instead of ends, it has results.
Thank you.
Okay. The next one's OE 10, the structure of schools. And two changes under here under the first section, 10.1. The superintendent will, we changed that to rather than negotiate, it's present to the board for adoption. And then with that last sentence there added, with the exception of having the calendar established at least 3 years in advance of the beginning date of the school year, was addition there to that policy.
Thank you.
On to OE 11, discipline. In this initial statement, the superintendent shall establish, removing the words respectful, equitable, flexible, and changing them to welcoming, inclusive, and conducive to an effective learning for all students. In 11.2, taking out the word any so that it reads and address behaviors that disrupt learning. 11.3 has been changing out and removing the word identify and address equities in discipline practices to implement a plan to remove systemic inequities in discipline practices and disproportionate outcomes.
Thank you.
The next one is OE 12, learning environment. It is in 12.2, clarifications in 12.1. 12.1a would read determination of student grades should reflect students' understanding of the course learning objectives. And B, students should have multiple opportunities to demonstrate and achieve a grade that reflects a high level of understanding of course learning objectives.
Thank you.
Okay. I have OE 14, instructional program. And one addition that was made on 14.5 is ensure all comprehensive high schools offer advanced placement or AP courses in English and mathematics, computer science at a minimum.
Thank you.
OE 15, technology, a change to 15.4, expectations for appropriate use of technology by staff. So the inclusion of the word appropriate and the deletion of the words and students. In 15.7, establish a regulation for the use during the school day of student cell phone and other personal electronic devices that prioritizes student mental health and well-being.
Thank you.
Okay, next is R2, academics and foundation. The updates to part 2, 2.9. Try to miss anything. Understand and apply current and emerging technologies. The changes are including artificial intelligence to demonstrate technology literacy and use technology with the addition of ethically and safely to solve problems.
Thank you.
All right. The next one, R3, civic engagement. And the changes under 3.5, we added understand appropriate, considerate, responsible and ethical use and impact of misuse of technology, including artificial intelligence and social media.
Thank you. That was a lot, but if we were going to go through and people wanted to just highlight what the substantive changes were, they would be able to listen to it tomorrow. So I appreciate that. Wanted to pause at this time and take public input before we do board discussion. And I understand there might be more after this as well. And I am on Zoom, so I will be able to see people on Zoom if they raise their hand for public input as well. So we will start with Duran Uzzle.
Tonight I'd like to discuss the OE14 instructional graph program, instructional program graph. And I have a few inquiry questions about how this idea of policy. First, concerning the rationale behind the decision to require all high schools to offer a courses. Where it seems as though we're really been talking about Skyline High School. Is there data into the student, educator, and community stories that indicates the actual need of the change? Skyline was established as an IDP system, providing students already with opportunities to take advanced courses through that program. Has the board considered which courses might be considered for the and the larger scope if these courses are added? This is an important factor, given that the district accommodation new AP offerings within the existing comprehensive schedule, considering FTE and student interest. Additionally, I recall my time on the board committee, or the bond committee, that there was significant new student and educator feedback actually advocating for programs. Thank you. For program expansion in the areas such as career preparation, health sciences, design, manufacturing, and engineering. This feedback clearly aligns with the facts from the ISD page. So why then is the board's focus on expanding advanced courses at a high school that actually already provides advanced programming, and not on addressing the other pressing areas for program development like career preparation and real world learning? Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Greta von Bargen.
Good evening. I'm Gretel von Bargen, devoted teacher at Skyline High School for 22 years and a parent of a recent Skyline graduate. Imposing the teaching of AP courses as outlined in OE 14 at Skyline without significant collaborative input from all vested interests in our school community feels inappropriate. Skyline is deeply rooted in the International Baccalaureate program and has served our students well for nearly 3 decades. Our reputation as an IB school attracts families to our community, and student enrollment confirms that our IB classes are in demand. The approaches to teaching and learning of AP and IB are fundamentally different. As a person who regularly interacts with IB teachers throughout the world, I can attest that I have never heard of a school that implements both AP and IB programs well. One becomes prioritized while the other languishes. Additionally, implementing AP courses at SHS will require significant resources. Any new course cannot be taught with fidelity without targeted training, instructional materials, and buy-in of the teachers with the subject matter knowledge and pedagogical skills required to teach the curriculum. Earlier tonight, you mentioned the priority of having an equity-based budget. Requiring AP courses not only risks the dilution of resources from the IB program, but also reduces the possibility of offering curriculum beyond the college credit earning pathways. If there's funding available for new courses, it should be invested so that all kids can benefit. Adding AP does not provide additional opportunity for the kids who are least served at our school. I can speak from personal firsthand experience of my own child. What SHS is missing is not college prep or college credit earning options, but choices for students who might be looking for non-college route to profession. Those are the kids who are most disenfranchised and who are least preparing for delivering into the workforce. Requiring AP classes fails to address the pressing needs of our most disengaged students and is a misallocation of limited resources.
Thank you. Christy Bennett.
My name is Christy Bennett. I've taught physics and astronomy at Skyline High School for 13 years, and I live within district boundaries. In my time at Skyline, I've seen our current college preparation program, the IB program, flourish and grow to serve the needs of many of our students. We are a model nationally for IB programs, and over 80% of last year's graduating class took one or more IB programs or courses. But I've also seen a desperate need for classes that meet the needs of students not looking to attend a four-year university. In fact, a new Gallup poll showed that 48% of students don't intend to seek a bachelor's degree right after graduation. This is one of the reasons why I wrote astronomy, for students that are looking for something different. The students I work with mention that they don't feel like they fit at Skyline and they don't have a lot of options for courses that interest them. Case in point, on day one of school this year, I had 42 students with IEPs. At Tuesday's curriculum night, I had a room of parents nod along while I shared that I want to help prepare their kid for anything life holds after high school, not just college. And I had several parents mention how glad they were that a class like this existed for their kid who just doesn't fit here. Two other bond committee members shared already, but I want to echo that we heard a need for innovation and different pathways for students. We need more opportunities embedded in all comprehensive high schools so that it's not just left up to the luck of the draw of who gets into Gebsen Eck. Our student needs must be met at each and every school. Reading through EO 14, I find it interesting this would indicate only a for-profit specific company would meet the expectations the board has for our schools. I think it would be more appropriate to talk about what goal it is that we're actually trying to meet. Please do not inadvertently limit choice and opportunity for our most vulnerable learners in favor of others.
Thank you. Spencer Phelan?
Hi there, I'm Spencer Phelan. I'm the IB coordinator at Skyline High School, and I will echo a lot of what my colleagues at Skyline say, but also add that I've done a lot of research in the last couple weeks to know what other schools offer who offer the IB program, and know that there is no other school that offers the comprehensive programs that we offer at Skyline in both diploma, career, and the number of students taking IB exams at Skyline, and also offer AP exams and courses at their school. While there are a few AP courses offered at individual IB schools, those are often just AP stats or classes offered at the 9th grade level, and none of those schools are offering the IB career program. And I want to lean into the idea that the IB career program is a unique, specialized career preparation program that also offers students an opportunity to take advanced coursework, and would echo that we have a bond coming up and an opportunity to add specific programs at our school that could be easily added to the career pathway programs already existing at Skyline. I've heard many people talk about the opportunities to add programs like culinary, opportunities for direct career preparation courses that could be dropped immediately into the career pathways. Again, no other school offers in Washington State and then in the United States a career program next to a diploma program as robust as the one that we offer at Skyline. I would ask specifically, as a believer in the IB program and the tenets it offers, why would be adding AP at all three schools and not IB at all three schools? The program, if you look at the teaching and learning standards pushed forward by IB, offer more critical thinking opportunities, ask for students to defend their thinking, ask for students to be metacognitive, do project-based learning, do presentations, are assessed multiple times throughout the year in multiple modalities, and are not simply regurgitating information on a multiple choice test in May as on one-shot opportunity that takes our already stressed out students and asks them to perform on only one day. Thank you.
Thank you. Molly Peterson?
Good evening, Molly Peterson, Skyline teacher of core classes, electives, IB since 2016. I'm co-chair of Skyline's Integrated English and Social Studies Department. I have questions about the planned update to OE 14.5. My first question is, what stakeholders have you spoken to about this update? Have you reached out to parents, to teachers at Skyline? Do you have data from other schools that have tried offering both IB and AP courses concurrently? I was surprised to find this change on your agenda without having had an opportunity to provide full and complete input rather than a 2-minute soundbite. My second question is, what is your end goal with this change? Frankly, I wonder and fear if your long-term goal is to eliminate the IB program from the district entirely. I fear you will use the current bond to open a fourth comprehensive high school as an AP school and then require Skyline to move from this AP IB mode to AP only in the name of uniformity. I imagine there are a number of concerned parents and community members who would have reservations about voting to approve the new bond measure if this is your long-term goal. On the other hand, if your goal is to provide opportunities for college credit within the high school, do you know that we're already doing that? Over 80% of the graduating class of 2024 took an IB course. Students taking IB history and IB Lang and Lit consistently score a full point above the world average on their exams, earning 5 out of 7 on average. By the way, the University of Washington accepts a 4 for college credit. Our students are immensely successful. If your goal is to increase student choice, I echo what my colleagues have said. You're duplicating a rigorous offering. You are not actually increasing pathways for all of our students. You're investing teacher time and public funds in an additional for-profit entity without new actual pathways. And it's sending the implicit message that our students are not doing enough. Taking IB courses is not enough. I urge you to pause, reconsider, and talk with stakeholders. Thank you.
Next, Amy Williams.
So good evening. My name is Amy Williams, and I'm here to talk about OE 14-5. First, I'd like to speak as a parent. My son graduated from Skyline in 2021 and earned an IB diploma. He took IB standard level math, which was right fit for him. He felt that earning college credit through a combination of a paper and a test was less stressful than his friends at other schools that took AP and had all their college credit basically on one test. Some of his classmates were able to go to college abroad only because they earned an IB diploma. My daughter graduated from Liberty High School in 2024. She took college in the high school calculus because the slightly slower pace was a better fit for her than AP calculus, yet still she got college credit. I'm also the Skyline High School math teacher in my 16th year and 12th year as the department chair. In this position, I've worked with many students, families, our counselors, and math department team on proper math course selection. In a district that is self-select, that can be a huge challenge. Adding AP math courses to Skyline will only make this more confusing. Adding AP courses will give us 2 college prep programs. This will require more FTE along with more money for AP training. I don't understand why you want to spend money to add an AP program to Skyline when we already have a strong IB math program and are in the process of qualifying for pre-calculus, calculus, and statistics for college in the high school. If you're looking for more ways students can earn college credit, why can't we focus on this program? It is now free for students and is already being offered at Liberty, since I know you are also looking at equity across the district. This program will allow our students an alternative to IB that can earn them college credit. Please remember, we have lots of students at Skyline that are just trying to do well in on-level math, classes like Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. Let's continue to look for ways to serve all of our students. Adding AP courses at Skyline is not it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think there is another person. I just don't have the list. So if you just introduce. You just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Courtney Beatty. This is my 22nd year teaching at Skyline High School. I have actually taught both IB English and IB History. I also teach Classics, which is a college prep focused senior English class. My oldest daughter is also a sophomore at Skyline. I agree with what my colleagues have already said. I have a lot of questions about how this has been rolled out and the communication process as far as this decision has been made, as well as the motivations behind it. To me, this seems like this is a solution to a problem that does not exist. And it really seems to be a solution that will actually create more problems. As an example of one of those problems, I have several close friends, including our former IB coordinator who is at Inglemoor High School. Inglemoor High School is the closest demographically paralleled IB school to Skyline in the state. And they are actually in the process of phasing out their AP classes. The reason they are doing this is because it actually created extreme tracking in their school. The top tier academic students took IB, the second tier took AP, and then that tracked on-level courses in a very negative way. I would also like to share some content-specific concerns. Spencer already touched on this a bit, but in humanities-based curriculum like English, history, and psychology, AP has actually been behind IB curriculum development that focuses on 21st century educational skills, focusing on critical thinking, communication, and curricular depth over breadth. AP has actually been making changes to their curriculum in an effort to be more like IB. My husband was an AP schools administrator for 15 years, and he describes this as AP chasing IB in these courses. In something like English, they're still chasing from a great distance. The English courses are still testing to a multiple choice test and still do not have a comprehensive speaking assessment, which IB English does have. As has been mentioned, there are already many pathways present to earn college credit, and we're sending a message to our students, including my own daughter, that they need to be doing more. My student is an on-level student with some honors, and this is sending the message that on-level in certain classes is not acceptable. That is not allowing them to follow the balance that we are looking for and that the IB learner profile really asks of students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Megan Santos. I'm a Skyline Humanities teacher. I teach core classes, electives, and IB psychology, and I'm the current co-chair of Skyline's Integrated English and Social Studies Department. I do also have 2 students that attend Pine Lake Middle School, one of which will be attending Skyline next year. I too, like my colleagues, have a lot of questions about this move. A lot of it are driven by what is the data driving these decisions? Why were the important stakeholders, including parents, families, students, and teachers, not consulted? And what is the inherent problem that this seems to be a solution for? When many of my colleagues have already reiterated, we've seen in other schools that this tends to cause more problems rather than solve any. My second question is really focused on our students. What benefit does this plan propose to provide to our students? In my years at Skyline, when students express dissatisfaction with their course choices, it's not the choices of the high rigor classes that they are missing. It's the students who are seeking alternate pathways and vocational programs who are feeling underserved. Additionally, we frequently discuss the need for broader support and resources for our struggling and special education students. These are the students that need our help and support. Skyline has already been looking at ways to expand our CP programs and our programs for our non-rigor students. I wonder why, rather than spending money to duplicate existing offerings, we are instead not putting our resources towards the students who need it the most. Finally, as a parent, I worry what this decision will mean for the future of Skyline. I drive my children 50 minutes each way to attend school in this district, not because I insisted on it, but because they insisted on it. Their goals and priorities were to attend Skyline's IB program. They have other options. They are strong students who could thrive anywhere, but this is what they wanted because they feel it will best suit their goals. Our community is filled with families like this who choose to live here specifically for this program. And I wonder why their elected representatives seem to be disregarding what the community values. Thank you.
Is there any other input in the room or on Zoom? Perfect. Thank you all for your public input. We appreciate it. And we know that it's time in a really busy time of year to come in there. So we acknowledge that and are grateful for all that you do every day to create the best student experience you can in your classrooms for our kids. So thank you. Wanted to open it up to some board comments. And I think I'll just start the framing first. There is no desire on behalf of the board to use this to as some nefarious plot to get rid of the IB program at Skyline. So let me just level set that, number one. Second, this is really about expanding student choice. And when we have 2,200 students at Skyline and 400 students doing the IB, we have 1,800 students that are not. And this is about flexibility in the schedule. So as an example, I have a junior at Skyline who can't do the CP program because the block schedule. And because with block being offered 3 times in this day, it is impossible for her to fit in the classes that she has as singletons and do that. So it's really important for me that she takes a college level English class because I think that is essential. And while there are lots of important things for students to learn in high level science and math in high school, I think foundational is humanities. And it is critical to me that she does that. So therefore, we had to choose to do IB block at the expense of an elective class that would have qualified her for CP. And so there are many things that if it was a single class of just an AP English class, and so she's not alone. Like, so to say that we haven't, that there is only board input, it would be a falsehood. So I just wanted to start off with that and then open up to my colleagues.
And I would also say it's interesting coming into the board seat role. You have different ideas around or perceptions, I guess, around programs at schools, and then you move into this role and you obviously hear from more members of the community, which is exactly what I've had the opportunity to do. And I will say I do talk to a lot of people in the community, and I will say that I've heard from many who have said we want more choices, particularly choices beyond IB. And so that has, over the course of the last several months, given me an opportunity to lean into that a bit more and really hear from members of the community. And I will say that I continue to hear that voice is gaining, I would say, more steam and is louder and louder. And so making sure that we're hearing that is important. So I want to address that. We are definitely hearing that desire from the community.
I mean, we have a lot of policies we went through, but I guess we'll stay on this one since there's such spirited input. It's interesting for me, right? I'm an Issaquah High School parent. And so some of what I will describe as complexities that I hear from the community on how IB is implemented was foreign to me, but we do get that feedback. We do get emails. We do get concerns and questions from community members feeling that they are reduced opportunities for their students. That choice is not there. I think this is not some binary choice between what we do for our special ed students, what we do for career preparations. We are 100% in support of a bond that will help us create opportunities for career prep, for non-college path, as we went through the lovely video we started today in every one of our high schools. So this is absolutely not a binary choice. I also don't think it's a binary choice between IB and AP. I have my nieces, for example, both went to an IB school that's quite successful that also has AP. So it is in the United States. So I think it is possible to give that experience. They're both quite successful post-college careers as well. And I think it's important for us to look at sometimes we have these reactions to these binary choices, which I personally find a bit frustrating. We will 100% serve our students that are struggling. We will 100% serve our students that have additional need. We absolutely are committed to the 40% of our students that are not going to college at all. And we have to be cognizant of those students who don't see a comfortable opportunity in our structures. Now, one of the things that was said, which I find interesting, is why not IB at all? Maybe that's something we do need to have a conversation about. What is the opportunity? I have no interest in the fear that's been expressed multiple times in running out IB. I've seen success from it, but I do believe we have to hear the voices that say IB is not providing the program for all of our students in Skyline.
Since we're staying on this topic, I would say the first thing I want to say to the teachers that spoke is I could not have felt more deeply when you talked about students that aren't taking high-level classes, and what are we doing for them? I remember my very first school improvement plan set of meetings, and hearing about Skyline getting 95% of students are at level in English and math. And I asked, well, what about the 5%? And just that question literally had never been asked before. What about the 5%? And so it deeply impacts me that you are concerned and care about those kids that are not going to be taking those IB classes or advanced classes if we bring in AP according to what this has. What I do know is that we have heard, now my kids went to Liberty and Gibson X. So again, I don't know much about the intrinsic structure, like the logistics of IB, but I have heard it from parents, especially the blocking, about how that restricts their ability to take classes that are way outside that. So they're actually being impacted to not be able to take those CTE classes and career classes because of the way that system is blocked. So that I've heard about. And the other thing that I've heard about is that a huge, and Harlan's better at the numbers, but what percentage of our students have already taken high-level advanced classes before becoming juniors in the other two schools? Is it 70%?
Yeah, so 50 to 60% of students at Issaquah and Liberty have taken an AP class by the time they're a junior. And that's a big omission at Skyline.
And so for me, that's where I sit back and go, but if I'm focusing on what is best for those students who are going to take those advanced classes, isn't there something structurally that we're missing if at the other two schools, they're getting that experiences as freshmen and sophomore to be able to really push and engage themselves, that our students at Skyline aren't getting that same experience. So that is why for me, and I've heard, I've been on the board 15 years, and this has been a topic of discussion before. It has been something I have heard from Skyline parents for 15 years. I have 1 year left. And if there's anything that I get done by the time this to me would be an impact to be able to say, I want to think about the 9th and 10th graders that are not pursuing those higher level classes. I want to make sure that we continue to focus on what is the career and technical and career options, being able to be earnings ready when you step out of our schools for all students. So both of those are important. And for me, it is not a one over the other. It's a yes and.
Yeah, I couldn't say it anymore and emphasize, if everything that we are showcasing about why the bond is important does not highlight our commitment to every student having the opportunity to find their passion. At Skyline, while the district average is about 61% of students go directly onto a four-year college, at Skyline, that number is higher than the district average, which shouldn't surprise you. There's less number of students at Skyline High School who take a college prep course than Issaquah High School. It has a lower number of students that go directly onto a four-year college. And I do believe that is in part because of the rigid selection that they have to take. And so it's important to me that students have choice, and they may only take a single AP class, and that's fine. But right now they don't have that choice, and they deserve that choice. And to say in a building of 2,200 students that it's going to compromise choice or make it look like kids are tracked. I mean, kids are already preferencing in very clear and distinct ways, starting in middle school. And what we're wanting to do is expand that choice, because currently at Skyline, you go from taking honors humanities in your freshman and sophomore years, and then in your junior year, you have to choose, I'm going to go take IB block, which very few students do in each graduating class, or I'm going to take regular English, or I'm going to go on and do Running Start. And I think a lot of people are pursuing Running Start because they want to get college credit for it, and they don't feel like IB block is the right fit for them. We need to offer them another choice. And if it's college in the high school, I'm not opposed to that as a conversation. But right now, they just need more choice. But I think we can probably expand the conversation to beyond OE14.
Yeah. Can I? Oh,
no.
Were you going? Oh, yeah. No, go ahead. No, if you still had on OE14. I did want to talk about OE12 too, and the really, talking about some of the changes here. Let's see, actually, am I on the right one? this one really having an emphasis on the wording change around understanding was important. I know we talked about that and had some good dialogue around that in particular. And obviously that's a policy of, that's where we've had a lot of conversation, obviously, over the last several months. So that was a good, dialogue. And I think that change was a good adjustment overall to the policy. So I wanted to note that.
I'd love to build on that one. I think that the previous use here on mastery has been a point of confusion, contention, concern. And so we spent a lot of time on what's the actual intent. And for me, this language feels very clear that it's about grades being about the understanding of the learning objectives and not some of the things that historically, as I understand, have been challenging, whether I show up, whether I do extra credit, whether I do some of the behavioral items that are important or deemed important. So for me, I think my hope with this language change is that it gets us from having this circular conversation of what do people mean by mastery and gets to something that's more clear, and by using learning objectives ties to the language of teaching and learning and makes that more clear.
And we're welcome any student input in any of these, so feel free to be brave and get my attention.
I have two things to say. First, I agree with Director Mullings about it's nice to see some, I think, more quantitative and specific ideas regarding student expectations in courses rather than the broad use of the word mastery. The second thing is just I thought that I had while you all were talking, while we're collecting personal feedback and data from our community members. We are we've talked about surveys and how you get certain students who answer the surveys, and my thought was, are there certain parents who send emails? And what about all the parents who don't send emails, whose kids are also in the system? And that was just my one thought that I was thinking about when we talk about personal feedback versus like school demographics and data from enrollment. Anyway, that was a thought that I had.
Thank you.
And I love that comment. And that's why I think the data Director Gallinger shared about actual choice and actual enrollment is super important, right? And so I think there's an opportunity for us to look at what courses, as well as going forward, there is student selection that drives what courses get put on. Students don't pick AP, then they won't be in them. So I think there's a natural process that'll shake out.
I wanted to go back to this one. So for me, 12.1a was really important to me. Determination of grades should reflect students' understanding of course learning objectives. If I was in a perfect world, we would have students, to me, the whole points-based grading is pointless. Worrying about the statistical analysis of every little thing down to a minute percentage, like point something, is pointless because it does not really tell me, has the student learned the objectives? I would love for us to have all our transcripts look like the Gibson transcripts, where it's like, what are the learning objectives? And how close are they to meeting each of those one? Here are the competencies we expect students to know, and where are they on the scale of actually having learned them? To me, that would be the ultimate way to move forward. And what I like about this is it doesn't stop us from really evaluating what are student grades, and are they reflecting the student's understanding of course learning?
Yeah, good.
And Hava, I appreciate your comments, and that's why it's always so wonderful to have our student trustees weigh in on this too. I would say there are some significant policy changes that we are discussing And I want to make sure that our parent community is hearing this and that they're responding. I mean, we are, again, this is a lot of these changes are from what we're hearing from our constituents. And so I would encourage parents, teachers, folks to send emails to the school board. That is how you can let us know if you have concerns with these changes. But I want to throw that out there. That is how we hear from our community. So it's important that folks reach out to us. And again, the importance of listening and participating in board meetings too.
And maybe the practicality of what we're doing. That's why this is a first read. And so that is a first public sharing. And maybe that's part of the discomfort is this is actually the process, right? So what do we talk about? There's a first read, an ability for people to weigh in before these become final. So I 100% agree with you. That's how these happen out in the open.
Yes, nothing is being adopted tonight. But then, Director Coyne, you've shared other feedback that you've heard from specific constituents. I think may be helpful just to share publicly.
I have, and again, would encourage other, parents, educators in the community to also opine on this and share feedback as well to our inbox. But I have heard from multiple parents, again, as I mentioned earlier, and really trying to lean into that in terms of kind of overall feelings around the IB program. And I've also heard that it potentially could even be having an impact on overall property values within Sammamish, within the Skyline receiving area, where there are more parents that are requesting to have more options, to have that AP option. And that voice, again, is getting louder and louder. I'm hearing that. And again, that was not something until I joined the school board that I had knowledge of or was hearing from the community. So that is a voice I'm hearing. And again, encourage parents, teachers to let us, the feedback is important. And as Director Mulling said, this is a first read. We're sharing this out with the community and we want to hear from folks. And that's important. So.
And we would love nothing more than the opportunity to be up at Skyline, to be at a staff meeting. Right now, that hasn't been offered to us. So, we have passed on that desire to the administration. So, Mila?
It's your first night.
Okay, guys, this is my first night. Bear with me. This is my first comment. Okay. I just wanted to put my appreciation for all the teachers that came down and were speaking, because it is a busy time of the year, as Director Mulling said. I think it's really powerful for us to hear from teachers, much like the board thinks it's very powerful for them to hear from students. So I would just say thank you for coming down. And I would also question, and I might not know what I'm talking about. This is kind of my thing. But I would question with the IPs. I was just wondering, where with the APs, I was wondering, it's going to the comprehensive high school, so it's going to Liberty, Skyline, and IHS, right? Yes. Okay. I just wanted to question. Thank you.
AP is today at IHS and Liberty, yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to know where the
I was
APs
not
were.
at Gibson Neck.
We are not mucking with.
You guys are not messing with Gibson Neck, right? All right. Thank you. That was it. I also I don't remember which OE it was in, but I really appreciated the change from respect to welcoming. I thought that was a really important change, and I think that there is a big difference between respect and welcoming, and that feeling of inclusivity, that was an important change for you guys to make, and I appreciate it. How do I turn this off?
So that is OE2, and that's actually the one I have up to comment on next when we're ready to move forward. So I was going to make that exact. So thank you for the segue on that one. So one of the updates we had a number of spirited conversations about across the policies was a use of the word respect. And you'll see that word. I don't remember how many references we had, but we had a number. of the use of the word respect. What did it mean? How is it being used? How is it applied? How does it maybe differ in meaning if it's about student to adult or versus adult to adult versus adult to student? And there are places where you will still see the word respect used because it seemed the most poignant use, but there's a number of places that actually have been changed in this way to welcoming and to it really being about more of an inclusion sense versus I think in some cases we have another one I can't think of, which was maybe a bit more about tolerance of other people's opinions. And so that is actually one of the, I think the nuanced changes that is weaved throughout multiple of these is what's really the right word and sentiment we're trying to get across. So this is one of them for sure.
Well, and to that end, I think this one was an important change for me because 2.3a originally said that you wanted to have an organizational culture that had showed respect for all opinions. I may not respect your opinion. And so changing that to have consideration for all opinions, what needs to be respectful is my response. So I don't have to respect your opinion, but my behavior needs to be respectful towards you. And so I think that to me is much more important because there are a lot of people's values and opinions that I don't necessarily respect. And being able to say, I'm not going to ask you to, as a staff member, to respect somebody whose opinion may vary from yours greatly and actually speak against your values. But I think your response especially as a staff member, this is the right treatment of people. We should always be treating them respectfully, even when we disagree. And I really have heard from students who have opinions that are not shared by the majority of their colleagues or classmates really say, but the other classmates are so disrespectful when they respond back to me if I don't share their same views. And so I think teaching our students how you can be respectful, elevating, how can we be show dignity in our responses and relationship with each other is something I really wish that all of society was really learning and focusing on, is how can we disagree but do it respectfully.
I want to take us to OE 15, technology, and going back to the importance of hearing from our constituents, from our students, from our parents, our teachers. And I want to go to 15.7 here and highlight this specifically. So establishing a regulation for use during the school day of student cell phone and other personal electronic devices. So this has obviously been a hot topic. We've heard from many in the community, and thank you for everyone who's shared their opinion on this. And I want to highlight that because we heard you, and that is something that we've added to this policy. So again, the importance of speaking up and letting your voice be heard. So thank you.
But that includes our why, and our why is for student mental health and well-being. It's not for classroom management purposes. Yep. And so people have a clear understanding of what our why is. And so what the district ultimately may be doing will be driven by that why. So
good point.
If you would move to 10.1. So this is something that is always a fervent desire of our parents, and I would assume staff as well. But right now we're behind in our calendars being released. And so we need to codify it. And frankly, if this isn't sufficient, we have no problem providing more detailed codification about what a school calendar could look like. We've heard pretty clearly from community and from staff about it, and you've gotten clear board guidelines on when school year needs to end based on the June schedule. So our preference would be to go with language like this that just asks for it to be 3 years ahead. But certainly if that is not sufficient for getting us to where we need to go, there would be definitely board interest in making it so codified that it doesn't really matter. Then it doesn't even need to be part of anyone can just look at the calendar and say like, oh, here's when the end date of school is, work your way backwards through it to know when the start of school is. But I want to highlight that that's an important community ask. And so we do need to get back to having calendars out much in advance of what we do. And yes, you had a comment on that. Yep.
We were asked to confer with just legal counsel about how this connects to and relates to our bargaining work and the CBA specifically. So this almost matches exactly, except for in the collective bargaining agreement, which is Article 12. It says that it's an attempt of having the calendar established at least 3 years in advance at the beginning date of the school year. And so my wondering would be to add that comment, that word in there with the expectation of the attempt. And the reason is because twofold. One is council has said it's helpful to match that with the current language in the collective bargaining agreement, as well as the fact that in general, because it is a negotiated component of our work with our education association, that there are a lot of variables that go into just lots of different bargaining topics. And so the complexity of that, the volume of that could change from year to year. So making sure that we have the attempt and having that not be in conflict, right? So that's where I wanted to bring that forward.
I appreciate you bringing that forward. I'm not sure that we'll ever have completely perfect alignment within everything, and I don't think that's necessary. I think that calendar is one of those things that is in statute that the board approves, and there are things like budget that the board is designated a role to approve. So I think that this is something that firmly is in the realm of the board that we want to express, I think, our expectation for. But I could be alone in that view.
No. So for me, I think I thank you for the research and the clarity. And the maybe what I take from that feedback is a goal of alignment between the two. I am personally not comfortable with the hedge being here, particularly as we see that there are other boards and other districts that provide significant more precision in the language here. So my hope would be that we can use this as the spirit to help motivate us to get to the goal. And if and when we have a situation where we can't meet it, then our discussion might be to then codify more here.
To me, this really is about planning for staff and for families. I mean, this is the one where families having to sit and wait for us to adopt the calendar is a struggle when they're waiting to hear from us. So I think setting an expectation of at least 3 years in advance, the beginning of the day of school, to be able to know out. I know all the dates this year, the next year, and the following. Actually, for our families, it's very important for them to know, whether it be for long-term childcare, whether it be for when they're doing vacation or family times, whether it's for our families, for our students who are living with two separate parents at two separate times of the week or the year. So I think it is really important from a parent standpoint that we are able to set those things out.
One thing and why I'm on 10 still, thank you for that. And I don't want to cut you off from if you had anything input before I move on. No? Oh, no. Okay. Is that one thing that's come up through bond conversation and questions is about sort of when there's going to be new boundaries drawn. And that if there is an appetite on the board to have that be something that the board approves. So not that we're the ones making it, but that the board actually approves new boundaries and feeder patterns. And why I bring that up, especially for people who haven't been here when we've done that before, we heard a lot of negative community feedback about our current feeder pattern and boundaries. And like, why did you do that? And as currently, we don't have any say in something that seemed like such a very big decision that impacts every student and building in our district. So based on that feedback that happened several years ago, since we're doing all this, would there be appetite for us to consider adding to this OE about board approval of significant boundary changes and feeder pattern changes?
Who wants to be first? I definitely heard a lot. I felt as a board member in the last one, I had raised some issues and concerns before the process even began. When I knew, hey, we're going to be building these new schools, and what is our conversation? I had been to an equity symposium, and they talked about how school boundaries impacted certain areas and showing how school districts were planning boundaries and how it was not necessarily what was best for students, and it wasn't student focused. And so I had concerns early on. I still have some of my concerns ongoing, and not having a voice. We are basically, too much of what we heard from staff today, we're the voice of the community. And to not have, if we don't have a voice in something as large as what are the boundaries for a school, where will your student be going? I do feel like that means the parents don't have a voice. And that's, I guess, how I reflect on that.
Yeah, if I think back to some of the largest upsets in the past couple of years, I'll call them non-COVID driven upsets in the last couple of years. Calendars is one. Just an amazing amount of pain and anguish that we've avoided in the last couple of years by having future calendars in place. The boundaries was another one that felt maybe like some self-inflicted pain. And they're really at the time without having something in policy in which we could more actively participate in that. I feel I have a lot of faith that we'll think about that differently, though, as an organization, as a district, given the most recent history. So certainly I wouldn't see represent for me, it's not about like we've got to do that this time. I feel like we're demonstrating we're becoming more and more of a learning organization. So I feel more comfortable. But based on the, at the time, what was things that could have been avoided, that were known, that were raised, that were communicated, I think that it's important, and maybe for me, just as a stopgap in the process, to be able to have that additional review.
I would agree. I mean, I think being a stopgap, as Director Mulling said, I think is a well, no, backstop. Yeah, backstop. Yes, backstop is a good. I mean, and I think, and like Director Maraldo said too, we represent the community. We have a unique perspective we can bring to it too. So I think, being that voice in conjunction with what the district brings, I don't think there's any harm in doing that. I think it could be beneficial. So I would be open to that.
Okay, well, I'll task our consultants to work on that language. But their initial recommendation would fit in OE10 unless there's board desire for it to go into another one. They said another possibility could be facilities, but this is about structure of schools, and that's why it seems like it fits here. For me, and thinking defining significant, I would say like a move that affects more than 100 students. I don't know, but I would be open to what you would say significant was, because when you're doing just minor boundary neighborhood tweaks because that makes sense for the school community, we don't want to be part of that. So, but we're really talking about something. And so for you, if the number is 500, like you kind of get a sense about what that would be. So, okay. Is there any other ones that want to be discussed and uplifted at this moment of first read?
I just really quickly on OE1, the operational expectation, the global operational expectation. Now I'm trying to get used to these. We had talked when we first adopted these about the word imprudent. And so I just wanted to specify that we did keep the word imprudent. We thought it was prudent to do so. And that there was a lot of work. There was a lot of work around the language of this. Like, I think our first pass was not great at taking out the double negativeness of it. And so I do want to thank our consultants for the amount of time that they had to take just doing the language on this. But I did want to highlight that we did maintain the word imprudent, even after we discussed taking it out.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I obviously advocated for that word to remain in, so I'm happy imprudent is there. So I would like to maybe take us back to OE 14 for a second. Giving a bit of time for just to sort of let that go through my head for a second. And I think one of the things we said we would do is, one, make sure we're looking at the value statement at the top. And if we had any updates, if we had any concerns. And I think I'm comfortable with this value statement at the top, right? That really what our goal here is about providing challenging, engaging opportunities for educational exploration, acceleration, and remediation. And that we should have a range for students. And so I think what we're trying to do here is in that spirit. I think maybe what I would like to do, I don't have a specific change suggestion here tonight, but maybe go back with our consultants and take a look at, are we properly representing with 14.5 as it is today? And in addition to that, are we properly codifying maybe the range that we're talking about? So, because what I don't want is there to be any confusion that this is a binary thing, that, that we don't care about career preparation, because clearly we do. We don't, so to somehow make sure we're noting or including, so this doesn't kind of sit on its own, that the policy really is about the range of offerings. Because I think there is a broad spectrum that this is getting to, and that we know that in context of that value statement, but I'm not sure that we're hitting on it in the actual individual line items that represent that. So I think maybe I'd want to add a little bit more meat around the range of offerings in here.
I think to that point, and I had actually jotted a note to want to come back to this, is perhaps it needs to be, rather than being about a specific program, that it just talk about having college credit bearing classes from grade 9 through grade 12, right? Because for me, that's to me, that's the biggest piece, is that I want to be able to see a range of opportunities for classes for students, and beginning in 9th grade. Again, when we start looking at 50% of students in Issaquah and Liberty already have a college credit bearing class under their belt before they, by the time they become juniors, that to me is where the big inequity is. And that's what I would like to get resolved. And I think having an opportunity to take something that is not as rigid and locked in as IB is also important. So I don't care if it's advanced placement, if it's college in the high school, if it's Bob's really advanced class. I just want to be able to make sure that students have that opportunity throughout their high school career, and that they're not so locked into one thing that I think I'm hearing about the restrictions in the IB program that are the biggest concern for me. So those are my two concerns. That, yeah, what the wording is to address that, that's what I want addressed.
But I would say if we don't specify, then that won't necessarily happen. And because, remember, Sammamish is compressed with so many students, such that there's 3 high schools within a mile of each other. And so our localist market, the hyperlocal market, is both AP schools that is driving what is a market inequity at Skyline, not just at schools that are neighboring private and public schools, but also at Issaquah. And so it is a disparity that is specifically about AP courses at our neighboring and in district schools that are having a huge impact on the student experience at Skyline. So I would say if we're going to add to it, I'm totally fine, but I would want it to still be inclusive of that, because that is something that we have consistently heard for years, right? More than a decade about how important this is.
15 years I've been on the board, and it was like year one. Yeah. And I'm just, what can we come to a consensus on, and what is the real need? So I just wanted to say that was what my parameters are.
Yeah, would be happy to entertain additional language if you want. So, and this may be one that doesn't go forward for a second read if we adjust it next time, and that's also okay. So we don't have to move them all forward at the same time. Superintendent.
I've heard different data being shared, and so I was wondering if it would be helpful. I'd like to hear if there's specific data or research requests you would like from the district to support this conversation next. I think that's something we can provide, and that would be helpful for the community to hear that be reflected on too.
Well, I think you guys have provided over time in various other reports all spring and summer long. If you want to provide a consolidated single one page of what happens at all of our schools across grades 9 through 12, then that would be fine.
Yeah, and when we come to talk about this, I don't know if there's an opportunity to post that, or if there can be a link somewhere so that the public can see that when they look at the agenda next time.
Yeah, and let me just clarify, for me, I'm okay with this level of specificity, as long as in addition, what we're adding is more clarity on the range of opportunities, career preparedness in every school, and other programs. So I just want to make this more full statement, in addition to what's here. But I think that's an important note, that we don't have to move them all forward at the same time, if we're not ready to do that. But for me, it's about maybe adding versus replacing here.
Yeah, and I guess I would say look at 14.3, and that's where I would probably want to add on to, because that's where it talks about ensure
exactly
that the
right.
instructional program includes opportunities for students to develop talents and interests in more specialized areas. And this is where you could do either a comma or including, or that's where I would recommend that goes.
100%. And it's this conversation that maybe brought to my attention, that based on that value statement, I understand what 14.3 is saying, but we could probably share a bit more of the kind of inside track about what that means there. But yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. And it certainly matches everything that we're trying to accomplish with this bond.
And I know I know it's just numbering and formatting, but it might be better, rather than it be 5.5, that maybe it's 4.3.1, and then around the having it comprehensive career paths would be 4.3.2, so that we understand that they're embedded in that first statement, which is instructional programs that include opportunities for all students.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great point. And again, I think, as Director Gallinger was saying, I think 14.3 definitely would be one we could expand on, because I think the range is important. But I do want to go back to being specific around AP. And again, I take this role seriously in representing my constituents. And I cannot tell you how many parents I have heard from this last summer coming into the beginning of the school year who were very concerned without having more options at Skyline High School, specifically having an AP option. So I think it's important we put that in there. And again, first read, we want to continue to hear from more members of the community. I think we've kind of come to a point with Skyline where I think we've assumed it's always IB. And I don't know if we really have this broader conversation around saying, well, does it always have to be IB? Could it also be AP? And I think throwing that out to the community and saying, hey, we're listening to you is important. So I think, we want to continue to hear from more people. Again, first read, we want more feedback on this, but I do think it's important that we have that specifically spelled out.
Yeah. Yummy. And then
I have 2 comments. Well, one question. First off, 14.5, ensure all comprehensive high schools offer advanced placement courses in English and mathematics / computer science at a minimum. Do those AP classes have to be I know this was like the first reading, but do those AP classes have to be offered at that high school? Because I know there's Skyline students that take AP classes at Issaquah.
They take the AP tests at
AP tests,
Issaquah.
Issaquah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
over 100 tests are taken every year at Skyline. Again, showing the market that's already there. Many of our educators' kids included.
Okay, thank you. And then another thing, please do make use of the student reps in this situation. If there's any questions you want asked, of the students, you can send us out and we can mingle with all the other student groups and ask those questions for you.
We would love that.
And I was just gonna say, I don't want to put anyone on the spot here, but there's been a lot of talk about Skyline tonight. So if any of the Skyline reps want to jump in, because they know the IB program firsthand, and I'm sure they've heard about the AP program at least at other schools. So I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but as a Liberty student, I know nothing about IB, so
We're intentionally not wanting to put them on the spot either. So, but now that you've done it,
I can definitely say that I've been very engrossed with all of the conversation because I've been able to relate to almost every aspect in terms of making the decision between IBCP or IB block and feeling a little bit forced by that. I had to make that decision and I did end up choosing IB block, and it's not something that I regret, and I absolutely love the rigor that the IB curriculum provides, and I think it definitely is an option for that higher level education that a lot of students are seeking. And I think AP also does provide that. So I do see some of that overlap. And I do share some of the concerns in which we would be allocating resources into duplicating something we already offer. I think maybe to alter the IB curriculum so it's not as rigid and you're able to still pursue maybe just independently the advanced options for English and not be forced into choosing between CP and block, or like, because I know block especially is the main struggle for a lot of people. I think that would be something we could consider instead of having to choose between IB and AP. And I do think that our focus should be on the career opportunities that we provide, because I think that's something even the higher education seeking students could benefit from. And a lot of students aren't able to access that. And then
I haven't personally taken any IB courses yet, but I am planning to. And what I've heard from most of my like classmates and like the student body is there's like some concern or like anxiety about not being able to take any form of higher level classes earlier in comparison to other schools. So like no offerings for that in 9th and 10th grade. Yeah.
thank you for encouraging them. I'm totally fine with you putting them on the spot.
I'm the bad guy.
We will never do that to you, so I promise. So it's a safe space for you. Okay. Any other comments before we move on from this topic? Anything else from our superintendent? No. Okay. Well, I will definitely come back to you with 14, and I like how you've suggested it, that 14.3 will then be expanded to be 14.31 and 14.32 to really, I think, show the symmetry that we're looking for. It's not or, it's and. So thank you for that. The next item on our agenda, because we've been on that item for so long. Oh, sorry.
I just had like one last closing question. So regarding this change, what exactly is the timeline we're looking at for possibly implementing a dual curriculum at all?
Yeah, I think from what we heard is about, especially for our earlier students in 9th and 10th grade, not having that opportunity as soon as we could feasibly do it would be the answer. What that is, what that is, I don't know.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
So I think, so if we follow this through, just give you a little bit more meat on it, right? The board would have a policy. The administration would have to figure out then how to react to that policy, how to enact that policy, how to work across the buildings to enact that policy. So they would then have to tell us, oh, here's what we are going to do and in what time frame. So this is a conversation about us stating what's important, and then there's a reaction that has to happen after that. So it's not like we make of, well, this likely now won't be the end of the month in 2 weeks, and then it's just like, oh, everything has to change this year, right? There'll be a process that happens after that. And as we've said a couple of times, the whole point of a first read is to open up the dialogue, to allow for more information to come in, for then us to have more conversation about it. So it's a big ship that has to move. It's a very big ship that has to move after that.
Great. And as we get ready to move from this topic, again, I want to express gratitude to our staff who have hung in there, and again, appreciate your advocacy and your voice. And this is definitely the moment we wanted to be hearing it. So thank you for that. The next item on our agenda is legislative matters. And I know our legislative rep is not here. So I probably don't want to do the board discussion on collective legislative issues without him. That would seem a bit awkward. But we'll only state that we are gearing up for WASDA General Assembly, which will highlight a lot of the policy and positions that WASDA will advocate for collectively. And it's going to be an interesting year because more than 25% of all proposals are for local control language. So code words for all sorts of things. And this is what I expected to have happen when the weighted vote was removed. So now King County is represented by 16 school districts that have registered for General Assembly, and there's only a total of like 80 total districts. And so they don't need to outnumber us anymore because they outnumber us. They just have to have 17. So they did the math, and the math is in their favor. So there might be larger conversations about what do King County school districts do that doesn't involve WASDA.
Form our own association.
Maybe I see a future for you. Keep you involved in public education. Okay. The next item is WASDA Boards of Distinction application and board self-assessment. So wanted to bring this up, and so it was sent to your inboxes last week, and wanted to have conversation about this. This would normally have been part of a retreat conversation, normally around the table. So do at this point for students, you guys are more than welcome to stay here. You're also more than welcome to be like, wow, I have a lot of things to do and don't want to get behind early in the year. So this would also be a fair time to not be here. But we will talk about this here because we have to, as we get ready to submit that application, is talk through this. And it's unfortunate that AJ's not here, but we'll do without him. And we'll just kind of go through it. Generally, it's for Matt, since you haven't been part of this before, we elevate what stands out to you from year to year, because you'll see it over the past, like I think 6-ish years are included in the bands. And you'll notice that it is just the 5 board members for the past 3 years. And I would have not ever noticed that till you pointed it out, or till you told me before, like, I don't fill that out. And I was like, oh, that's great. Even though it like gives the opportunity for superintendent, the email says to recommend the superintendent doesn't fill it out. So yeah, every year you've been superintendent, it's just been board members. So there was a difference from 3 years ago. So wanted to let you have a few moments before we want to talk about it. And so we don't have to go item by item, but things that you want to highlight that jump out at you, or things that you think that it points to or a big change, or whatnot. For me, I think just in general, I was surprised at how more consistent it was than not with year over year, in spite of us having a change of 2 board members.
So what was interesting for me in these results was it was the first time, I guess, I wasn't the new one. So I don't know how to explain this as much as I think going through the onboarding of the new members was a very good grounding for me. Like, so, because when I went through the onboarding, as you guys will experience and if there's new board members, it's drinking from the fire hose, very much a Microsoft corporate term, right? So much is coming at you. It was actually very good for me to go through this onboarding with the new board members and be like, oh yeah, I know that now, but why do I know it? And question things more and not feel like I was kind of full of information and always trying to struggle to catch up. So for me, I just think maybe what I'm saying is as an experienced board member, there is the added value of the onboarding that I think shows up here. And like um, carry out annual assessments of the board's performance. It's like, yes, we do that. And here's where we covered it. Or, are we setting our goals or do we have plans? And so it was just, I felt like this go round, it just felt like I'd had a more, almost like a second onboarding, which I thought was really helpful.
I think one thing I saw was maybe, frankly, more of a positive shift year over year. I don't know, maybe that is, I don't know, I'm guessing maybe AJ and I maybe coming in and having a positive view of it, which is a good sign, I guess. Not to say others don't, but I know I felt very positive on a lot of these questions, but.
And I think that's maybe what I'm commenting on, that it wasn't so much negative before for me, but where I might have had more neutral answers, I felt like we'd really covered those things in a very explicit way. Intentional is the word I'm looking for, in a very intentional way this time. And so it was much easier to be like, I know exactly what we've done on that topic. So yes, exactly.
And I would agree with that too. I mean, I think from what you're saying, I mean, I think my interpretation coming onto the board was that, a lot of these things are being done very well. And that's how I scored it. So I'm not surprised that we saw that. I mean, again, it goes back to the conversation we talked about our onboarding. I mean, we came into this, I mean, obviously, still drinking from a fire hose that entire year, but because of the thoughtfulness around our onboarding, it gave us, the ability to really see the insight and the strength of our board. So I know that's how I felt, and I think it's showing in our scoring here.
Add one more thing. I think the other thing that was material for me was having a year into the strategic plan, because it wasn't wishful thinking that we either didn't have a plan or we're going to have a plan. Like, we have a plan and we're working against that. So I think that's another one for me that felt very clear this go round.
So I had reviewed it earlier, but I didn't write things down. So I wanted to write a few things down that I noted, specifically around the first one is around differences. So there was a large improvement when it said regularly evaluate and adjust resources and strategies for closing achievement gaps to maximize their effectiveness. We went from having a lot of people kind of in the yellow to that was green and blue. So meaning it most of the time or all the time. So we didn't have anyone in the yellow on that one. And I thought that was a good place for us to be in agreement that we are really doing that. But the 4 areas where I think we still need work, according to this, would be around setting goals for its improvement. And by its, it means us as a board. So we don't really have goals around where do we want to, as a collective group, improve, which is hard when you have 2 new people. I would say that there's probably area for improvement. So what is that? Do we want to set some specific goals for that? Have policies for evaluating staff based on student success. I think there was a green and then a black going, do we really do that? Which I'm going to assume is one of the newer board members, like how are staff evaluated? So that might be an opportunity for a work study for us, is to talk about the evaluation system. Follow an effective process for responding to questions, concerns, comments, or feedback from citizens. So I think the most difficult part about that is it might be different depending on who sits in that seat. So do we have a consistent method for, I mean, President Gallinger has responded very elaborately to some emails that we've gotten where that might not have been the response in the past. So what is that expectation? Do we actually have some type of process in place for that, for more consistency with that. And then the last one is ensure the public is well informed of the board's roles and responsibilities. Although I think we've tried to do well. And so there was not agreement that this is an area of work. Because there was some green, like, yeah, we always do that. I think that's based on the fact that we have done the video series. So it just might be more, I would actually, some good information for us would be, what is the viewership on those? And how might we evaluate whether or not we're actually getting across to the community what our boards and roles and responsibility are? It's tough to measure. Our only measurement is our perception of that. That's all I had.
And Director Maralda, you may have, were you talking about question 72? The one on, I think you were, oh yeah, communicate district performance to the public in clear and understandable ways. I think it was probably included in yours. That one's, oh, okay. That one did stand out to me too, as maybe another area of opportunity, but it kind of goes along with some of the same questions in terms of, again, opportunities, I think, to communicate, which is, I think, a key opportunity, just something that we should be always looking to strive for improvement and being able to track. I think it's an interesting point, being able to track maybe number of views on some of those videos and maybe put those out there, and you take the time to do that. And I would hope people are watching that and listening to that, but may not be. So it'd be good to know if they're not, because maybe there's another effective means of getting out that communication.
I would just highlight question 7, follow a defined process for gathering input prior to making critical decisions. I think it sits in a consistent, we don't do that great performance, versus you look at most of them, it's mostly green, like it's majority green, not all of them, but in general, versus this one, it's consistently one green. So, and this is like for the past 5 years, maybe, no, pretty much for the whole time. And I think tonight would highlight that as an example of
yeah.
And it's really hard to get the cadence of starting the first read of things and getting voice and input to it, and it's a dance, and I understand that that's a challenge, but I would just say that I think we continue to also just acknowledge and feel that it is we don't have a defined process by which we do it, that the community would know, like, oh, if they're going to do something, then we'll be expecting to hear it at this time, and we'll be asked at this moment, and we know that this meeting is coming, type of thing. And that could be something, as far as if we were going to set a goal, that I would say that's what we would do is, if we're going to set a goal, so I get to the questions, set a goal and just focus on number 7 and improving. Let's define a process that the board expects the board/district to do in implementation of new policy or whatever it is we want to choose. But I think that might be something that'd be really value added, probably on both sides, because then I think it's also about the team of 6 having clear expectations of each other about how it goes.
Would this also mean to how we, I mean, I guess I'm assuming it would, how we engage the community in this too. So I think, because
that's what the input is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and broadly kind of giving, outlining what that looks like. I guess the challenge I have with it is we can make that a goal, and I think we should. I think that's a great idea. But how do we engage and how do we get this out to the community so they understand that too? Like tonight, like you said, critical night. We're doing a first read of some significant policy changes, and we need to hear from the community, and we need to make sure the community understands this process. But how do we? I guess what I struggle with is, how do we get that out so people see that, rather than after the fact, I was never asked, or I was never given a platform.
And this is why I would say it's probably the chicken and egg thing, but we got to do the chicken first.
True.
And so what I would say is, we map out the process. No,
that's fair. I think that's fair.
And then we start to build repetition on that process.
True. Yep.
Then it will build pattern and memory.
Yeah.
And then I think it'll build on itself. But right now, it's scattershot. Every time is sort of like,
I think.
So I think if we build the process, I think we'd have to then say, like, so let's then lean into it. Let's, flesh it out and then make sure that it's happening with fidelity.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be consistent of like this rigid thing, but it could be like in these menu of options, we expect these are the stakeholders, this is the timing, this is when we bring it to the board, this is how we revise it, and then just so it's a very clear thought out and people would know when and how they would plug in. And then I think it would become more engagement when they know what to expect. In the way that I would say an example, so our school improvement plan process is really, I think, in a good space right now, and in ways that it was very uneven for many, many, many years till we got to where we are today.
Yeah. So I think it's a great idea and example, and kind of satisfies two things in this report. One is, do we have goals we're working on? Yes, I think that's a really good goal for us to work on. I think the approach in which we go through and landing on one and publishing it is would be wonderful. And I think the example I would give is, how will they know? Well, it's like, how did they know when we went from 3 minutes of public input to 2? Like that, it mattered. It mattered to them. We publicized it, we reinforced it in this room. And pretty quickly, people were like, okay, if I'm going to give them information. And so I think if we can maybe when we were looking to revise the student rep, one board member took that on as a bit of a project. And then I think we brought in 2 and we had to go make it real, but like started to draft up what could it be and review it that way. I think could be helpful for us to kind of get something going. But I think that part about us just being consistent and reinforcing it, it's amazing how quickly some of those things become known. And that's my greatest example, because people know how much time they have with us, and they know who can do it, and they know when it happens. And so I really like that as an item that we should set a goal on, and have a volunteer who wants to help us come up with the approach along with the administration.
Well, and I wonder to that, and completely agree. I wonder though too if we can kind of walk and chew gum at the same time with this, because I agree, we need to have a goal put in place, but I'm struggling spending the time doing it unless the community knows about it. That's the struggle I have with this. Like it's almost, I know we need to have something in place, but getting it out to the community, I think, is the biggest struggle with it. And so I'm almost wondering, do we need to have kind of 2 areas of focus around that? And I would be, raise my hand to figure out how we get it out to the community, and figure that piece out. But I feel like it has to go hand in hand. That's just my thought.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we map it out and then we send out to the community saying, this is what you should expect from us. And then so give us feedback on it. This is what we plan on doing as a pathway or a process. How does it feel to you? I don't think we'll get many responses.
Well, that's just it.
I think we'll get more responses on process and feedback once we actually start using it.
Yeah.
Because we can ask 2 questions. Like, one, what is your content feedback? And what is your process feedback?
Mm-hmm.
And if I use the student rep program as an example, we made it an agenda item. It was published. I think we did, I'm pretty sure the comms department had done like, the board is entertaining this. Like, we can wrap the same communication vehicles around it. And more, the first year, what did we have? 20 applicants? Something like that. It wasn't huge to 88 this year, right? So that we laid down our first skeleton of how we were going to tell people and what it was. And the beginning was, actually, I thought a lot of people applied in that first year, like, oh, we have choices to make. We didn't expect to have choices. But to go from that to 88 in 2 years. So I think, to Director Gallinger's point, we use this agenda item to put it forward. And then as we use it, people be like, oh, they're doing that. And they use the same thing again.
Yep.
It'll permeate that way. But it's the use, I think, that gets it out there.
In your reflections, I know you didn't input it, but you got to see the results and see whether it lands. Like, are we off base? Do you feel like, as we evaluate ourselves, i.e., the board and the system, does it seem like it fits? Or were there places you were like, oh wow, that like how did you guys choose that? You can be honest with it.
I actually did not look at the results. My truth right now is that they didn't come to me, so I didn't review them.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, so uh I think it's important that we partner always on communications. So that was just the last part of the conversation. And so the board meeting in and of itself is the time where the board discusses matters of importance, whether it's new ideas or also just codifying and sort of starting to formalize, right, existing, prior suggestions. And that happens through our monitoring reports, that happens through sometimes bird walks, I would say, but that's where I think these board meetings are a really important vehicle for the public to engage and to hear things. So I would say this is where we continue to think about how that happens in the conjunction with other things. So happy to partner. Of
course.
I think one thing I want to note, because I'm sure for folks maybe that are listening to this conversation, I want to make sure people understand that we're not, patting ourselves on the back for this. I mean, yes, some of these results are strong, but we're also having the dialogue in terms of how we can get better and obviously setting goals around, particular questions. And again, for members of the community, engagement is important. We want to be able to engage with the community. You are our constituents. And so that is an important thing. So I want to note that because sometimes I think it can be perceived that, hey, we're patting ourselves on the back. Yes, some of these are very strong results in terms of how we perceive this. But again, there's always areas for opportunity. And I think our conversation around particularly, identifying a particular question or questions, although I like the idea of just doing one. I think sometimes if you narrow it to one particular areas of focus, you can get more success that way. So I think there's a lot of good that can come from this for us.
I just had one other in case. So thank you, President Gallinger, for pointing out the one about the following a defined process for gathering input. Because I tried to go through and be systematic, like what did we get, two or more where we said sometimes, which is the yellow. And there was another one that I missed, which is publicly recognize the efforts of schools in improving student learning. And part of that is Washington used to have a recognition program that they've done away with. Kind of, whatever the achievement. And so I think it might behoove us to be able to take on what is the way that we're recognizing how we're improving in the area of student learning.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would love, but it would be too much staff work to be like, if each board meeting we could acknowledge teacher of the month that is nominated through our district with some district process would be really nice, because I'm not a real big fan of just mission moments, but being able to elevate our people, I think would be a really nice thing. But that again, while it sounds like a nice idea, actually translates into a lot of behind the scenes work that is not aligned with what we need to get done right now. So I agree with you, but I think it's so hard to.
Right. It might be just us having more maybe a time of acknowledgement when we're doing the overall SIP review. Right.
Our brains are starting.
I know, right?
The recognition program is somewhat resumed. So there was a little bit of a catch up last year, but it was like 2 years worth, but it wasn't as prominent. So that's an important note that we should do more on that one. But it was kind of a slew of recognition all at once.
Okay.
And do they do banners with that like they did in years past?
To my knowledge, we did not receive banners this past year, but we can ask more questions about if something has changed. Yeah.
Anything else about this? Okay, thank you for that. Again, sorry we couldn't fit it into the agenda, but we have to do that before Monday. So the next item on our agenda is announcements and correspondence. Any individual ones that did not get sent in?
I mentioned a couple things. Just a couple events I want to highlight that are coming up. It's at Skyline High School on Saturday at 2 p.m. is the Sammamish Tech Fest, and it will be highlighting STEM programs on the east side. It'll primarily be Issaquah School District students, but we're anticipating students from all over surrounding districts as well. So wanted to highlight that. And then also the Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank breakfast and luncheon is coming up on October 1st, an organization that's near and dear to me. So I wanted to call that out.
Thank you.
Well, if we're calling out future events, I do want to specify that Influence of Choice is doing a Hidden in Plain Sight at Issaquah High School on the 24th. I know a lot of you are busy on the 24th and will not be able to join me for that, but it is open to any parent throughout the district, so you don't have to be at Issaquah Heights for any parent. And it's a great opportunity to learn about potential signs that your student might be using substances and ways to have great conversations with them about your feelings about their use of alcohol and other drugs.
Thank you. The next item, well, as far as an announcement, I will say, with much gratitude, welcome back here to us and our team. We couldn't be more thrilled.
Thank you.
And so thank you.
Oh, I'm very happy to be here. It feels like I just had a dream for a year and, and now I'm back.
Oh, what does that make us then? Yes. So the next item is calendar and future agenda topics. So NSBA, it's never too early to start planning. Luckily, it's not over spring break weekend. So the 4th through the 6th, it would be great for you to let us all know pretty soon which dates and if you're planning on going, and if there's early bird sessions that you want to go to, et cetera, et cetera. Would love to sort of find alignment with the board much earlier than we did last year. And I know last year was hard because we had 2 new board members coming on and your calendars and life were set already before you joined the board. And then it was over spring break. And I was like, I went to pre-conference and then was like, no. So please get that on your calendars and would love to see you there for some of it, because I think it's a great moment for us to be able to see all the great work that is happening, and certainly a lot of the innovation ideas that we have that we're talking about today came from NSBA sessions and dialogue conversations, and even sort of like the AI policy work that we do came from that. Then wanted to highlight that 2025, so the legislative conference has changed this year. And so if you look truly at a calendar, you'll notice that January 11th and 12th, where the dates are, if you look at the WASDA-WASBO, is Saturday, Sunday. And legislators aren't typically there then. So the plan is that they'll have some essentially small caucus style meetings with legislators on that Sunday, the 12th. And they don't have actually a formal where all districts come and do a day on the Hill. So our thinking during agenda planning was to suggest that we have an Issaquah day on the Hill on the 13th. So it would be a Monday. And the point of that would be to have our students that wanted to go and participate in what I think is going to be a very student-focused track on that Sunday. And we could then also plan a dinner with legislators that were in Olympia for that Sunday evening, spend time together as a board and student group, and then have a day on the Hill on that Monday, the 13th. So that is an option. It can be any other day, but right now there is not going to be a WASDA scheduled day other than what I just mentioned.
So the 13th would take the place of what is happening on the 11th, although it sounds like it's a pared down schedule on the 11th. We wouldn't be doing both, I guess is my question.
Yes, right. So on the 11th, it's programming of which you could participate virtually if you wanted. Okay. You may recall it was I think it was part in person, part virtual last time as far as the speakers. But the really student focused part would be the 12th anyway. And then to go on the 13th as on a Monday when people will actually be in session. And what they heard from districts was when we do it in February, we feel like we're already too late. Like people are already like long past being able to give voice to a particular prioritization. So that's why we thought about mid-January. So open to ideas. It's not that we have to make the decision today, but the earlier we make it, the earlier we can get it on student planning calendars, which are important, as well as obviously the team that you would have to bring to do it. Yeah. But again, this will be the first time we do it on our own.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to have those conversations with legislators and such an opportunity for the students.
Yeah.
Right. I think what we do that is so different from so many other districts is we actually have our students be the ones speaking to their legislator, which number one is empowering for them. Number two, legislators get to hear directly from the students who are impacted by their work. And yeah, and I think it's such a great learning opportunity.
And I agree. It is a great opportunity for our students. Would the thought be we come in on Sunday, the 11th or the 12th?
That would be my recommendation.
Spend the night and then do the morning session on the 13th. Okay.
And that Sunday is optional.
It's a good idea.
Once we see the actual program, we might make it not. There might be some sessions we would say not optional for students if they're going to come participate. And then we would have board dinner at the very least come for that, because that's this board student dinner, which is a really important moment. And there's a lot of training there that happens. And then we roll right into a day of advocacy. So I'm hearing head nods for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay. Want to also highlight ASU GSV is the 6th through the 9th. So you would just fly from Atlanta right to San Diego. Well, at least there's direct flights on Delta, I'm sure. So keep that in mind. And as soon as you know, you will let us know. Anything else for calendar and future agenda topics that we need to talk about? This was on here. Are these covered? I don't know why they're on, because I thought we did all those. Okay. We'll talk about the next meeting if we need to. Perfect. Any thing else for the good of the order before we adjourn? 8:53.